All right, all right. Greetings, everybody. Haki Hamid, the Success Scholar. Thank you for tuning in. It's a wonderful opportunity to join you all today. We're broadcasting live from Raising Consciousness and Capital on YouTube and Facebook, and the Teaching Artist Institute on Facebook, and Thai TV on YouTube, and my Haki Shakur Me pages. And so, uh, man, I'm excited about what the collaboration of brothers and sisters that we have coming together for the okay. All right, coming together next week in Baltimore. All roads lead to Baltimore. The State of the Black World Conference will happen April the 19th through the 23rd at the Convention Center. We are excited about that. I had my mentor, Dr. George Frazier, on a little earlier talking about Black business and his role in the conference. But as the president of the teaching artists,
folks rolling up on folks' interviews. So you got superstars on your show. You got celebrities on your show. So people running up on Minister Server, your celebrity guest, and they just checking out these songs.
DJ Fudge running up on me. DJ Fudge running up on me. Because, sorry about that, brother.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Oh, man. You got
that DJ Don Boogie. Go ahead, though.
You got that celebrity thing in Atlanta going on, like, can't go nowhere. Can't go nowhere without somebody.
He can't.
Now, but you know what? That's the beauty of Atlanta. That in Atlanta, every nigga's a star. So, and all that celebrity stuff don't even fly down here. We all fam.
Right. I feel you. No, I feel you. No, it's a beautiful thing. And so, yeah, so we're excited about, you all's participation. So the Teaching Artists Institute is, collaborating with the Hip Hop Caucus, and, I'll allow for both of the brothers, and, and I think Brittany is trying to get on. Let me get her on here once she changes her browser, but, just share, how this, for instance, and I'm not sure how you are, came to be a part of this, but you can, just open up and share, your background, for instance, your role in hip hop and the industry and the genre of music that we all have grown up on, and just have an open conversation. We're not going to be long, but definitely want to plug both of you and your work, and both of you will be in Baltimore, so we it's always better to be with a friend. Yeah. So just Mr. Serb, you want to start it off?
Okay, cool. It's crazy because I was actually involved in the State of the Black World in 2002 here in Atlanta.
Wow.
That was the first one I was involved with. And it was crazy because that's when I was actually still in ministry school before I even started working with KRS-One. I was the executive director of a hip-hop collective here in Atlanta called Nation Time Syndicate. And, the whole goal of Nation Time Syndicate was to have everybody specialize in what they specialize in, so you wouldn't have to, do everything. We had a collective. And this was back in 1992 when I started working with them. So in 2002, when I was asked to be a part of the State of the Black World, I was definitely honored to be a part of that. That's when Chuck D was the keynote speaker, I think, for the hip hop panel down here. And Chuck was dropping jewels like only Chuck can drop and whatnot. And, fast forward a year later, when I graduated from ministry school, and KRS-One hired me to be the national organizer with the Temple of Hip Hop and his spiritual advisor, the work was the same work that I was doing with Nation Time Syndicate. KRS, of course, gave me a bigger platform to do the same type of work that I was doing. So since then, I tell people, in 2 months, I'll be celebrating my 20-year anniversary of my graduation and ordination from ministry school. So for the past 20 years, I've been blessed to travel around, the country and the world, teaching hip hop culture beyond entertainment, or the spiritual, cultural, and or political side of hip hop. For people that know KRS-One and the Temple of Hip Hop, back in 1996 when the Temple of Hip Hop first started, the whole goal was to look at hip hop from a different lens, to really expand it. KRS said about 30 years ago, rap is something we do, hip hop is something we live. Mm-hmm. So when he hired me fresh, so when he hired me fresh out of ministry school, as I tell people, I was 39 years old, married with 6 children. So I never was running around playing hip hop with KRS. That was never the mission. It was always the work. It was always being able to show people that you don't have to be this superstar icon, that you could be a regular brother and sister like myself and still activate this culture because it's come from our ancient past. As we all know, we're not doing anything new in hip hop, but we have a renewed way of looking at the elements and things of that nature. So, I'm excited, to be in Baltimore, to be a part of this hip hop summit because to me, there's a natural connection between us as Africans and what we're doing in hip hop, which is why, according to the United Nations, hip hop is the fastest growing culture in the world. And we're less than 50 years old. So from our end, we know that the creator and the ancestors play a big part in what we're doing because we haven't been able to figure that out for ourselves, and we're still growing. So, what I'm saying? So, linking with different, groups like Hip Hop Caucus, who I've been working with for about, close to at least about 10 years now, at least, whatnot. So anytime there's a conversation of hip hop beyond entertainment, I'm always honored to be a part of that conversation because I think we bring a different perspective and a wider view of what hip hop can be. And as I tell people all the time, with all due respect, I don't just call myself Minister Serve. I did 3.5 years in ministry school so I could be of service to my people and my community. So while I don't ascribe to any religion, we operate hip hop from a spiritual and higher infinite power healing our people. So everybody's spiritual path is welcome within the culture. So I'm looking forward to sharing that next weekend in Baltimore, Tubman City.
Yeah, Tubman City, right. Thank you. Appreciate that, brother. All right. So let me go to the Queen Mother here, brother, before I come to you, Brother TC. Dr. Swan, unless you coming in, you want to just add a little anything you heard or introduce yourself?
Well, I can introduce myself. I was inspired by what I heard. I love that. I love it. I want to hear more. I am the Chief of Staff to the Executive Vice President here at the Hip Hop Caucus. And I also have responsibility for developing and expanding our global advocacy. At this point, we are primarily in the environmental space globally. And so we're looking to how we're going to grow that, obviously, because we have a number of connections around education, around a lot of the social justice, human rights issues that are going on, obviously domestically, but expanding that reach and those connections into the global space. And I'm just looking forward to hearing more about what we're doing for State of the Black World. I've been following it at a distance, so I'm happy to be a part of the conversation. And I see that our Senior Director for Storytelling and Comms has joined us. Brittany.
Hi, Haki, TC, and Dr. Swan. And I don't know somebody on here, but I'm Brittany. Nice to meet you all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Brittany. We appreciate it. And
Peace, Brittany. I am Minister Server. Nice to meet you.
Oh, we were on a call together last week, Mr. Server. Yep. How are you?
Right. All right. I think you muted, Mr. Server. But yeah, well, let me go to TC, Brother TC, Brother Terrence, TC Muhammad. Thank you for joining us. You in Greensboro? Is that North Carolina?
Yes, sir. That's Greensboro, North Carolina, home of the illustrious North Carolina Agriculture and Technical State University. I gotta throw that in always. My team knows I rep Aggie Pride all day. And I say that, and I start off with repping the Aggie Pride because right now it's springtime. and I'm watching all these young students do their HBCU tours. And literally, I just spoke with about 20 young people from New York today, from the Bronx, from Brooklyn and Manhattan. And then I worked with some young people from Long Island and Queens the other day that came on a college tour. So it's very interesting that tonight I'm having this conversation about hip hop and with young people, where we know the birthplace of hip hop began. But I think, it's very significant that we're having this conversation because, as Minister Service said, we're not looking at anything new. If you really understand the culture of hip hop and really understand what it is, there's always been a teacher. We know KRS-One, but there's always been a teacher, a guru that always gave the community what they needed. There was always a drum. There was always a beat. There was always something. We say Kool Herc brought the people to the party for a sister on Segwich, bringing them. But that Jamaican root of the DJ, the music, the bringing the crowd together, that djembe, that drum always brought us together. And, if we look at the metal netter or the hieroglyphics, there was always the writing, the graffiti on the walls. And so we always seen that. And then the break dancers dancing to the break of the beat. But there's always been African dances and dancers to that rhythm. So this State of the Black World Conference, Reverend Yearwood, our president and CEO of the Hip Hop Caucus, who years ago was the political director for Russell Simmons Hip Hop Summit Action Network. The architect of Vote or Die with Diddy and Jay-Z and all of that. In 2004, we formed at Howard University the Hip Hop Caucus. And as we always, everybody has an analogy for hip hop, but we always say hip is to inform, hop is to move, and caucus together. So we are collectively working to inform our people and our masses around social justice, strengthening democracy, our climate change and environmental justice platforms, and getting people to move on these issues in a collective way to make it possible. So we are, as Minister Service said, we are hip hop. We live hip hop. This is not something that we do. We don't get on the mic and get off the mic. We live hip hop because we are a part of the culture. Reverend Yearwood and our brother, Dr. Daniels, he's a beautiful brother, and he is really in the trenches of working for Black people, and not just Black people here in America, but from the diaspora and the global. And as Dr. Swain said, that we are not only, just now doing the climate work, but we have been doing work, of course, around the divestment, of course, around environmental justice. But if you understand hip hop is not the 8 to 10 songs that you hear on the radio. Hip hop is global. I mean, hip hop. I remember Chuck D, and thank you, Minister Server, for bringing up Chuck D, because he was like, "You want to be a rapper? What's your vocabulary? You're like, what are you going to rap about? What are you going to talk about?" So, and then just the fact that he mentioned how there's hip hop artists that speak and rap in multiple languages. I heard Wyclef. I was at an event where Wyclef started to rap in English, patois, French, and another language, even in Spanish. And I was like, that's bars. When we talk about bars, that's bars. But I think tonight for this conversation, the state of the Black world, Mos Def said something one time on his album. He was talking about, you want to, we act like hip hop is this boogie monster that comes out of the mountains. And he said, if you want to know the state of hip hop, know the state of Black people. So if you want to know where hip hop is, look at the condition of our people. And Minister Server can run the history of hip hop where there was a level of consciousness, and there was a conscience because in that era when hip hop began, what was being taught in New York? What was the lessons? What was the culture that was going on that translated into a Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, or KRS-One, Brand Nubians, Poor Righteous Teachers that gave this consciousness? And anytime that we evolve and create an art, the enemy or someone outside wants to come control it, monetize it, or change it, especially if it's elevating the condition of our people. So this particular summit is not the normal hip hop summit. It's not like, well, why are they rapping this and how do we produce a beat? No, we're really looking at the consciousness as some people, fifth element knowledge. We're really looking at the global impact of hip hop, not just from a monetary standpoint, but the global impact as far as the power that other people know and they're using it that we not necessarily going to reclaim, but there are a lot of artists that people just don't know about that are doing some amazing work with the culture of hip hop, and even teaching our babies using music, using culture be a method as a methodology of teaching. So I think tonight's conversation is going to be a rich one. I just thank Dr. Daniels for the long-standing relationship that we, the Hip Hop Caucus, has had with him as an institution, and the relationship and the brotherly love of Dr. Daniels and Reverend Yearwood have had over the years in different places at different times, but continuously do the work of liberation for our people.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Let's ask a few questions here. Let's throw out some things. So let's. Who do you all feel that the early pioneers? What were some of the early pioneers of hip hop?
You know, I'm gonna go to you, Minister Server, because you know I started mine. I started my rock kill. You know, I like my Coogee rap, Run DMCs. You know.
Well, as we talk about this Hip Hop 50, what I'm really loving about it, it's obviously a double-edged sword, because the corporations are going to do what corporations do, which is try to exploit and get the most out of what they can do, and they don't care about us at all. But one thing that's live about this conversation is that there's a whole era of hip hop before rap music. It's like August 11, 1973 is when we start our history. But the first rap record doesn't come out till 79. Right. So if we want to talk about what was going on in those 6 years, you talk about some of the pioneers. People need to know about the Cold Crush Brothers. People need to know about Tetris 3. People need to know about the Disco 4, Grand Wizard Theodore, and the Fantastic Romantics, and Shy Rock, and the Funky 4+1, and Double Trouble. There's so many groups that, this is a year that it's beautiful to see those names called, because we don't really talk about it enough, because the entertainment industry, just in the past few years, did they start opening up and break, kind of cut back on the so-called age restriction, because they tried to make people think that at a certain age, you should just give up rap music. As if, you don't have the Rolling Stones 150 years old still running around doing what they do. You know what I'm saying? So we had to kind of grow into that. But there's a lot of pioneers. I know back in Atlantic City, one of the pioneers that I wish people would talk about more is Spoonie G.
Yes, sir.
LL came and took the whole Spoonie G thing to the next level. But Spoonie G, with love rap, and even the way that we had to pull from other music, because again, there were no rap records. So the first big single, of course, Rapper's Delight, is based off of Good Times. You know what I'm saying? Chic. So, so the whole tradition of going from the past to the future, that's always been a part of hip hop. But there are a number of pioneers. But what also I talk about, every city has their own pioneer stories as well. Right. Because while the Bronx is the one that gets the credit for sparking it, it wasn't an accident that it went from the tri-state, down south, out west, to the world. Because as TC so masterfully said, it's things that we've been doing forever. You know what I'm saying? But some of the pioneers, I'm glad to hear that we're talking about Kool Herc, and we're talking about, like I said, Grand Wizard Theodore, and names you don't hear. Talking about the Rocksteady crew, you know what I'm saying? Talk about how when Kool Herc, the whole origin of even the B-boys and B-girls and the whole graffiti side. What's really interesting about it, most of the artists, even Kool Herc, he was a graffiti artist before he was known as a DJ. So it's like, most of us have had, multiple levels of skills that we have dealt with. And with the industry, again, it came in and kind of chopped it all up. So once the first rap record came out, that's when we started doing business, and it became a battle of the culture and the corporation. And now, who's winning that battle? I guess it depends on from the lens that you're looking at it from. Because the corporations seem to be doing what they're doing, but the culture has permeated the entire world. They say everywhere there's human beings on the planet, there's some form of hip hop being expressed. And that goes all the way back to those pioneers, that first laid it down. It wasn't done for money. It wasn't done for fame. It was done for self-identification, self-improvement, self-empowerment, which leads to positive social change. It was about turning negatives into positive. That's what 50 years ago was happening. And so those pioneers should be, lifted up. Now, of course, some of the pioneers are, jumping out the woodwork and probably hasn't done anything for the past 45 years, but they still get props, for what they did as well. So,
and that's
I'm just going to add, I always add the woman homage here with MC Light and Queen Latifah, Salt and Pepper,
yes.
Rock, which you mentioned, Minister Server and Roxanne Shante. I do want to also,
Yes.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, as we talk about this on a global and international impact and scale, Moni Love, who was a British
No
rapper.
doubt.
And
No
so
doubt.
it shows that even in the very early days, it still was not localized to the U.S.
Yeah.
Right. And just to add on what Brittany was just saying right quick, the actual, the August 11th party was sparked by Kool Herc's sister, Cindy. You know what I'm saying? So again, it was Cindy Campbell, Pep, who we call her Pep, who was Kool Herc's sister that did the Back to School Jam, that had her do the Back to School Jam, which we now call the first thing. And even the first rap record that came out, that was by Sylvia Robinson, a black woman. So again, it's like our connection to black women is at the core of what hip hop really is, which is something else that the industry kind of shifted that. And but big up to all the sisters that laid the foundation. Big up to Sylvia Robinson, who had the vision that we could take this thing that was happening in the streets and actually make records with it and whatnot. So big up to all the sisters from the Oregon for sure.
Yeah, and then let me just throw out there, Shot Rock was from North Carolina, grew up in the Bronx, but she was from Wilmington, North Carolina, just to put that in there.
Put that out there.
But when you throw out there, you remember Busy Bee and the Beat Battles and that whole history, and even go to Gil Scott-Heron, the Last Poets, and when we talk about so this is a cultural thing. So when we look at the pioneers, and I'm glad Minister Service said it's really kind of conceptualizing when you look at the history, because there's that one point there was nothing in the Midwest. There was nowhere nobody could go to, no label, no what do you do? We're not known here. How do we do? And some people don't even know the history of Too Short. When did Too Short start and how big Too Short was, on the West Coast before it was known. And then we started looking at us taking our own labels and starting our own things, and that evolution and that growth of hip hop. And I think, and I say that because now, as Minister Service kind of laid out, is that people's perspective of the history of hip hop is different. Because when you ask young people, like, who's the greatest, they may say a Jay, a Biggie, but they may forget a Nas, they may forget a Rakim. I'm like, you hold up, Illmatic? How do you, so when you watching people label, I'm like, you are not even part of the culture labeling what the hip hop is. We do honor the pioneers, and it is interesting when Minister Services said, like people are coming out the woodwork. I was here, I was there, but like Grandmaster Caz, Grandmaster Caz told you, like, yo, they took my lyric, they took my rhyme book, and made this song, and he'll tell you about where hip hop came from. It was a cadence, somebody was going off to the military, hip hop, and it got caught on. So there's these multiple amounts of stories about hip hop, and sadly, as Brittany was bringing out, there's a whole list before the list you gave of MCs, female MCs, and shout out to Dr. Roxanne Shante, who's still doing a lot of things, and MC Light, one of the few that have translated over the years and have kept going and been able to do things. But I think in the pioneering stage, we didn't mention the Zulu Nation, and that whole culture, because one of the things about hip hop now, they always talk about all this crime and violence in hip hop, and we don't understand that hip hop was an avenue back then to bring all of the gangs in New York together. So what happened? Who put that up? What was the concerted effort to put that out? Because we always had a Coogee rap. I mean, like, you know, we talk about Coogee rap. Come on now, but it's how and who's taking ownership or who's taking ownership of the narrative of hip hop. But I think great pioneers that still should be uplifted, and some artists that are out there now are paying homage to them and actually giving resources to those artists that didn't make all the money that artists are making now.
Wow, true. Yes, I think I just. So who did Eric B and Rakim? Where they were the first one to get $1 million contract? I just saw something like that.
Rakim, because I'm thinking. Don't let me stop lying. Don't even.
Okay. It's all right.
Let me call my best friend and say, yo, bro, you know you got the records.
All right, what would you say? What has been the impact? I mean, I'm throwing out there generally speaking, but how can we measure the impact? You said something about the fifth. You know, it's the fastest. That's interesting. You said it's the fastest growing culture in the world. So how?
Yeah.
I'll just put that out there. How do we? What's the impact?
Hip hop is on every part of the planet.
Yeah,
there's nowhere you can go in the world and not experience hip hop. There's just nowhere. Why? Right. Because hip hop is in our elementary, middle school, high school, college, movies, commercials, radio, every form of social media. Hip hop is. Hip hop is there. Hip hop is in just about language. You know what I'm saying? I know hip hop artists that are Chinese, Japanese, French, Brazilian, Spanish. So hip hop is everywhere, and hip hop is you. I even seen an old white couple in a church using hip hop. I mean, so hip hop it has grown to the point that hip hop actually gave spice and season to a lot of people's culture. When nobody was cool, nobody had fashion, nobody had swag, hip hop came and put sauce on it. So when you saw people gravitate to hip hop, you saw them be cool. Who was Justin Bieber before hip hop?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of people.
Excellent point.
Yeah, before hip hop, everybody wasn't as cool and that wasn't as fresh. And like I said, hip hop, even the beats are being used. They bring old school hip hop now to sell cars, to sell anything. So hip hop is, billions of dollars. Even, and let me just say this, and I'm not talking about rapping. I'm talking about a clothing industry. I'm talking about video. I'm talking about audio. I'm talking about voiceovers. Hip hop, we the hip hop caucus. We're a political wing of hip hop. We are employing people to transform and then to the social justice movement because of hip hop. Right. And we're using culture. We're using hip hop to galvanize not just folks in DC and LA where we're based. We're using this method around the world. We have had conversations with people in Cape Town, South Africa. We have talked to people in the Amazon. We have talked to people literally all in Egypt, in Scotland, all over the world because of this thing called hip hop. So the power of it is very powerful and it's very great on the monetized side or a social justice side, and just a way of communicating that you may not understand anybody. I've seen people, Public Enemy, do concerts all over the world to people that don't even understand, and they are going absolutely crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. And that quote about hip hop being the fastest growing culture, I was on a panel at George Washington University in like 2009, and that's a direct quote from one of the representatives for the United Nations. There was a panel called Hip Hop and the United Nations Bridging the Gap. So the UN has these 8 millennial goals that they're looking to reach, and they said that they will not be able to accomplish their goals without going through hip hop culture. Because as TC said, everywhere there are human beings, hip hop is existing. So, and hip hop has been a sidestep they're able to adapt it and make hip hop what it is to them. You know what I'm saying? So they're not trying to just copy what was happening here in the U.S. They taking it and making it their own.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to keep in mind the true impact and the movement that hip hop is able to give globally. I know I've traveled a great deal globally, and I can't imagine any place that I've been, from Kyrgyzstan, some of the most remote areas, to we went to COP 27 and some of just the streets and avenues and boulevards that we went there. After the sessions, to go and engage with the individuals who actually live there and live the life of whatever is going on in Sharm el Sheikh. And you could walk down the boulevard and hip hop was actively being played and danced to, being sang. I found that even whatever the social justice or democratic movements are, the democracy-based movements are in the global space, hip hop is at the center of it. Mm-hmm. As you go to the diaspora, but also in other areas, you can go to Brussels, you can go to Paris, and I don't care where you are. Hip hop is always being on, whether it's in the clubs, on the streets, walking in a restaurant, I don't care where you are, you will hear hip hop. And if you have a movement that's beginning to happen in our communities globally, hip hop is at the core, moving up and out to make it become active and advocates about whatever the social justice of human rights issue of it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. Okay. All right. So,
and I'll just add really quickly that I think, that it is a larger indication of just how Black people in general influence culture. Like prior to hip hop, when it was disco, when it was, 60s and 70s R&B soul, and we came with platforms and bell bottoms, and then people adopted that in the way that we do it. And so we are trend setting. And I think that's just because we are the natural leaders of the world.
Right. Thank you. Beautifully said. All right. Yeah. So I guess my final question will be 32 minutes. So where's the hip hop caucus going globally, and how? And some of you sort of spoke on this, and how and where and how can the hip hop caucus act to inform and inspire the international culture of hip hop? If I read that right, you changed this.
Well, I'll let Dr. Swan certainly speak to our larger, possibly future plans of what we hope to do. But I know that to TC's point, we've been in South Africa. We've been to COP, which is the international conference that is happening, I think, this upcoming year in Dubai.
Yes, Dubai.
And so we'll certainly have a presence. We'll certainly have a presence there. But working with you all in the State of Black World Conference and some of I think there are at least 6 countries on Saturday that we'll be in partnership and collaboration with, that I hope would only start as just the beginning to longer standing relationships that develop and more programmatic opportunities for collaboration in those countries.
Right. Dr. Swan, you want to add anything?
Well, I think Brittany has really covered it. I think that we want to make certain that we are connecting with those around the diaspora. We want to be sure that we are touching base with, obviously, South Africa, and we've already been and had connections made. And when we were in Sharm el Sheikh. But then as we went through Cairo, we made some connections coming back out of Sharm el Sheikh. We are looking to definitely touch the global South broadly. We're looking to deal with, Nigeria and Ghana, and many of those that have actually been invited to the State of the Black World. And so we're looking to make those connections there. But in terms of the broader expansion of the work that we're hoping to do through the Hip Hop Caucus, that is still in the planning stages. However, I would say that the idea is to pick up on the movements that are happening globally with those from the hip hop culture. And of course, that would be looking at a lot of the rights that are being taken from people in our communities within the UK. If you look in different areas, I mean, it's not all about our necessarily brothers and sisters who are in the diaspora, but those who are being pushed back, pushed down in some of the larger communities, whether it's in France, there's a lot going on there. A lot of police-related issues are happening there. If we look at what's going on in the UK, you're having, it's even a activity that is happening now that is restricting protest in the UK. And that's mainly hitting our communities because our communities are those who have a lot to protest about. And so while we have a great deal going on with the environmental space globally, we're building on that and those environmental connections to start building on the democracy piece of what needs to happen around police brutality, democratic rights being restricted, voting rights are even being restricted in some of the major countries that we're concerned with and that we as the United States are partnered with, but yet we're seeing a lot of that happening there, and a lot of that is obviously happening here. And so the hip hop movement and hip hop culture is going to be very active in pushing back in a global space. And we think the Hip Hop Caucus is going to be a leader in that. And we are looking to do that through the connections that we're making now and that we build on in order to build a strong foundation as we step into those spaces.
And then one of the things I wanted to add, Dr. Juan Brittany just laid out some beautiful things that, we see that's going to happen as the state of the Black world, some of the work that we've done and some of the things that we see ourselves going into. I just want to be very clear. Sometimes people have the misconception when they come to the Hip Hop Caucus. Oh, what artists y'all got? We're not a label. You don't come look for artists at the Hip Hop Caucus. And I say that because we're not just a sing and dance. Hip hop is not just sing and dance. Can y'all dance for me? Can y'all sing for me? I need somebody to dance for me. No. We are also like what Nipsey Hussle was doing. We are also trying to help young people be entrepreneurs. We are also dealing with the industry of the banking industry and making sure that we use culture and hip hop and tell stories. So hip hop is about telling a story. So we want to make sure that we craft the right narrative. So we are telling different stories. We're trying to make sure our children are going to the math and sciences. So, when we deal with hip hop has grown up. We're 50 years old. So stop looking at us little babies and running around playing. When you see Jay-Z is still lyrical, but you see him in a suit. So hip hop has branched into a whole lot more things than just a song, but hip hop has branched into building industry, building communities. And I think, one of the things in the industry, as we look at hip hop, the record labels are feeding out. They're trying to hold on, but because for the internet, we touching the whole global world. And, I love hip hop artist Sampa the Great, but, she's a great artist, some of her music. But, hip hop, because of, like I said, the internet is connected us all around the world. So with that, we see the work that we're working on. We still see the social justice work that needs to be done across the planet. We still see the environmental justice and the climate justice work that we need to do across the country. And so this work, like I said before, wherever hip hop is, we just got to figure out where we're going to be. Because everybody needs their own sense of culture, their own sense of self-worth and own self-being. And that's what hip hop was. It was just for us to tell our story. It was for us to have our own freedom of expression. Love, peace, and happiness. That's what we wanted. We wanted love, peace, and happiness. And that's what the Hip Hop Caucus is trying to give people that are most vulnerable, those in the worst hit in climate destruction, but we want them to have love, peace, and happiness. And that is through fighting for justice for our people. So that's the thing the Hip Hop Caucus is doing, not only here in the country but on a global span. And Dr. Swain, she's going to, man, the things that they got planned. Y'all just need to come to the Hip Hop Caucus and find out. Stay tuned, sign up, and just be a part of it.
I also think that the Hip Hop Caucus is going to become a stronger voice in terms of ensuring that those who have enjoyed and benefited from being hip hop artists and being involved begin to actually have more of a voice when significant things happen, like the Tyree Nichols beating and others. Yes. We need to hear from you. We need that leadership, because you have the mic, you have the voice, you know what your power happens to be as hip hop artists. And so now we need also to be able to lean on you and depend on you to help be that voice that you've always been in the past. But now it's becoming even more important, more significant, more relevant. We have to have these artists that have incredible influence to begin to speak up and speak out more forcefully and more in a more consistent way on the issues that matter. And having said that, I think that they also, I think they know, but in many instances probably need to be reminded of how many folks are following in their footsteps globally, trying to make movements happen the way they've seen that they can happen here in this country. So I think that the Hip Hop Caucus is going to be a leader in that space. And I think that we're looking to figure out how to do it in the best way that's going to be inclusive of all and be expansive in the work that we're doing.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, I think we touched on a lot of things, and we are looking forward. I just want to, one more. This wasn't on the question, but a lot has been talked about this museum. That's in the Bronx, right? In New York.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. What y'all think about that? That'd be my final question. What y'all think, and what do you feel?
Well, I'm actually on the advisory board for the Universal Hip Hop Museum.
Okay.
And I'm also on the Artist Relations Committee and the Educational Committee. What we're looking to do with the Universal Hip Hop Museum is to actually be the official record of hip hop, which is why we making sure that we're including, the whole history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know what I'm saying? Because when we're talking about history, we can't just tell the parts that make us feel good. We got to talk about the challenges, and I think that's one of the things that for those of us that are 40 and older, we didn't do such a great job in connecting our young people to the culture. So when we didn't connect them to the culture, it left the door open for the entertainment industry to come in and kind of rebrand it. Because those of us that are over 40, we know that there was a time where there was a distinction between rap music and hip hop culture, which is why the top show on MTV was called Yo MTV Raps. It wasn't called Yo MTV Hip Hop. You know what I'm saying? So there was a shift, and we have our theories of why that shift happened and the causes of it, and who made those changes in that. And yet we have a unique opportunity now to remix the history in the way that is going to be empowering to our young people. So, for example, with all the things that are happening with young people particularly, it's surprising that there's not too many political rappers. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't hear the politics of rap. Every now and then you might hear somebody drop a line or two, but there's no more Public Enemy. There's no more X-Clan. There's no more Paris. There's no more Queen Latifah. You don't hear those type of artists, even in the so-called underground and independent. And that's because of a long period of time, we weren't teaching that. So we can't blame our young people for not knowing what we haven't been teaching. But that, to me, is the beauty of hip-hop, is that we can always, use the different elements and the different visuals and the songs. So, for example, down here, I work with an organization called Hip Hop Bridge Builders. And what we do is we introduce the culture to young people via rap videos. So it's just like if you show a Public Enemy video from 1990, you can have a whole conversation about what was going on politically, what was going on culturally, economically, where the industry was. And young people, as TC said, they want to hear stories. So if you tell them those stories, it connects them as opposed to trying to talk about the kind of rap music that they like and things of that nature. So we, as the ones that have experienced hip hop in a different way, we can empower them and give them a vision. And the last thing I want to say, May 16, 2001, when we went to the United Nations to establish hip hop as an international culture of peace and prosperity, we have a document. It's the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. And that document, when we begin to take that a bit more seriously, then it kind of gives us guidelines. I tell people that it's not any laws or any commandments, but it's guidelines if you want to live a positive, productive, progressive hip-hop lifestyle, if you want to achieve health, love, awareness, wealth, peace, and prosperity for ourselves and for our children's children. As TC said, this is well beyond singing and dancing. We are adding on to a legacy that our ancestors created for us, and we're adding on to it to pass it on to our children and our children's children. So when we begin to really frame it like that, and unfortunately, we don't take that as serious in the United States of America as some of the countries on the continent of Africa. They take it a bit more seriously because they don't have the same entertainment, big glaring light on them like we have, so they can take the culture in its fullness. But I believe that we are in a unique position right now as we look at Hip Hop 51 forward to really frame it in a different way and give the young people the tools and the strategies to be empowered. And, as they say, I believe the children are the future. Teach them well, then what? Let them lead the way. So I'm all with that.
And I thank you for bringing up the museums, because the Hip Hop Caucus is partnering with the Queens Public Library, Museums, and Archives around the 50th anniversary moving forward. And so we are going to be involved not only with Queens, but as you know, the Queens libraries are connected with other libraries across the country, in Compton, in Chicago, in Detroit. So we are engaged with that particular movement around celebrating the 50 years and beyond into the 51st and moving forward. And so we're very proud of that partnership that we're working on there. And I think that we're going to see more like-minded connections as we reach into and reach beyond our shores into the global space around where and how is hip-hop being, the historical aspects of hip-hop being archived and saved for future generations.
All right. Well, it's been beautiful. So I'm very grateful and appreciative, and and we all can get some good sleep, and looking forward to connecting with you all next week. All roads lead to Baltimore next April the 19th through the 23rd, and most of the workshops on the hip hop discussion will be on Saturday, right, Brittany? All right,
That's
we have
correct.
three powerful workshops, 3 powerful panel discussion, and so we're looking forward. Hope we have some merch that just came in, so you all can see the T-shirts and the fanny packs. The brother just arrived today, so we're excited about that, and we'll have that for display. So thank you all. Look forward to building next week. So see you next week. Peace and blessings. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right,
Peace and blessings. Thank you all for having me.
All right. Peace.
All right, y'all.
All right, sir. Peace.
Peace.